Avatar: The Last Airbender is what I consider to be the greatest show of all time. Sure, there are a lot of other shows that can contest that crown, but to me, Avatar has always been the best. Whether it be writing, animation, characters, world building, or so many other things, Avatar just seems to get everything right. So today I would like to rank every episode in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 1, Water. Note, this is not a full review of the season. I plan to do a full review of every season of Avatar at some point in my lifetime, but for now you will have to deal with a much lower effort ranking video. Also, when I use adjectives, I'm talking in regards to Avatar, if that makes sense. When I say something is bad, I don't mean it is bad in general, I mean it is bad for Avatar. Or when I say something is good, not great, it isn't good, not great in general, it is good, not great for Avatar. Just keep that in mind when watching these rankings, because in the end, I do find every episode of Avatar entertaining and enjoyable. You guys probably understand the rules, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just putting the 20 chapters of Season 1 all in order from worst to best, and let's just get into the Great Divide because you all know it's number 20. Even the more episodic episodes of Avatar, which are more common in Season 1, are always still character-focused. Even if these episodes don't play into the overarching plot, the characters normally either are developed more or continue their arcs, the one exception to this being the Great Divide. It literally has zero impact on the overall plot of Avatar, and doesn't have any important character development. But, you might say, it does have character development. Both Katara and Sokka have their characterizations fleshed out, and I would disagree. Sokka has already been established to be the meat-loving teenage boy and doesn't need a whole episode devoted to that. Katara is even worse, as she comes across as being a bit of a neat freak, but that is never brought back again over the course of the entire show. It's also extremely comical how the tribes are so similar to both Katara and Sokka. On top of that, they try to act like the differences of the tribes has caused a rift between the two, and it's something that the two characters must put behind them, but that was never really fully established. The only character I feel like actually got a little development in this episode was Aang, who starts to come into his own as a problem solver as the Avatar after he got his feet wet in the Spirit World episode. However, this is undermined by the fact that he uses a lie to solve the problem. It sends a conflicting moral as the lesson of the episode, and at the same time it feels out of character for Aang, and all of that is just for one gag. Even other things that Avatar normally gets right, like side characters being well characterized, fall short here. The tour guide being the top example. One minute he is talking about becoming part of the food chain, then he is imparting elderly wisdom onto Aang, then back to being crazy. Even the world building here seems a little off. I mean, the Great Divide is clearly just the Grand Canyon, but in Avatar. It lacks the level of creativity we grow to expect from the franchise. I'd like to reiterate, The Great Divide is not a bad episode. The animation and music is still good, and there are still some good jokes, and these are the characters we love, and they continue to build the world of Avatar. But at its core, The Great Divide is a meaningless episode that amounts to nothing more than a waste of time. Oh, Jet, what a strange episode. Let's start with Jet's plan. Jet's plan is delusional at best. He's going to free the town from the grasp of the Fire Nation by destroying the town. There could have been an interesting message here about the costs of war and at what point are sacrifices too great and at what points are they justified. But for that to occur, the plan would have to have sacrifices, but still have an outcome that could have, through a certain lens, benefited the people of the valley. Here, the plan is absolutely batshit retarded. The rest of the episode is fine, but definitely generic, nothing we haven't seen before. The Robin Hood-esque cute boy who ends up actually being bad, while one character sees through his lies while the others just see him as being jealous. It's all been done before. And it's really hard to buy the Jet Katara romance at all, really. However, there's still some solid Avatar action, humor, and world building, as always, but Jet is definitely towards the bottom of my Book 1 rankings. The Fortune Teller is up next, and this is the last of the inconsequential, more episodic Season 1 episodes. There is some really solid comedy in this episode, and it's ultimately why I have it slotted here above Jet. It is more entertaining. With that being said, it is goofier, not quite as strong as most of Season 1, but I just always go back to how funny a lot of it is. On top of the humor, I also like the scene where they defend the town from the volcano. It's a pretty cool atypical action sequence. I could see the Fortune Teller being a little higher or even a little lower depending on your taste, but for me it's just more skippable and forgettable than a lot of Season 1. The Warriors of KYOSHI centers around two subplots, and they both leave a little to be desired. The Aang Katara subplot is boring and cliche. Aang lets his popularity go to his head, and Katara ignores him while hiding her jealousy. Nothing you haven't seen before. Even worse, though, is the Sokka-Suki subplot. Sokka is just annoyingly and blatantly sexist, so the show can turn to the audience and say, hey, sexism is bad. What I don't understand is Avatar was always pro-strong women without having to stop the show directly in its path to be so blatant with its message. It's more effective to just have the show have strong, independent female characters, like you already do with Katara and will have with Toph and Suki in the future. Suki could just be a female warrior that kicks ass. I'm good with that. But having a full episode devoted to sexism is bad is just kind of annoying. I will admit, though, there is some interesting stuff going on with Sokka not realizing what it means to be a man due to the lack of fatherly figures, and relying on sexism because that is how he falsely views what it means to be a man. So there is a little bit of a saving grace there. Luckily, this episode is better than the sum of its parts. The warriors of Kyoshi and Kyoshi Island are great additions to Avatar lore. There are some solid jokes, some solid action. The episode is just entertaining and better than you would expect based on a lot of my analysis. It's just in the grand scheme of Avatar episodes, this is towards the bottom and overall not as memorable as a lot of Season 1. This is the other Season 1 episode that does not handle sexism in a subtle way in the slightest. Let's start with the positives for this one, though. The B-plot with Zhao learning that Zuko is the blue spirit and decides to pay off the pirates to take out Zuko is awesome. I love how smug Zhao is when he thinks he got away with it too. And I love the culture of the Northern WATERTRIBE and how it takes a lot of influences and combines them to create a new faction. With that being said, the sexism is bad message of the chapter overshadows everything else. And it doesn't make much sense that Pakku is painted as a sexist asshole and he's just going along with his culture. The show wants you to dislike Pakku and be against him until you realize that he was engaged to Gran. But I can't judge a character based on the moral standards of our world and our culture today, only the moral standards of their world and their culture. Pakku isn't worse than the chief or any other person of the tribe, really. I don't know, I just hate stopping the plot dead in its tracks right before the season finale to look the audience in the eye and tell them the message that you were getting across the whole season with much greater subtlety. Don't worry though, that's the last episode we talk about sexism, I promise. And as a whole, the Waterbending Master is still a very solid episode. The episode that started it all, The Boy in the Iceberg. It's fine, I guess. I mean, it's iconic and introduces us to a whole new world and our lead characters, but it just leaves a lot to be desired. The animation quality feels worse than even the rest of Season 1. The jokes are not the best, and the episode as a whole leans more on the side of kid-friendly than deep storytelling. I mean, to be fair, it is the premiere episode on a Nickelodeon series, but I can't help but just wish that we were past the early Season 1 episodes. With that being said, I do appreciate how this chapter introduces us to the world, and it doesn't have the glaring faults that we talked about with the other episodes, so here it lands. The Avatar returns as the second episode of the season, and it comes in here slightly above the first episode, but not by much. Not too much happens in this episode. Aang is captured and escapes, and Katara and Sokka decide to go help him. The action scene is solid because when is an action scene in Avatar not at least solid? But like a lot of early Season 1, I can't help but just feel like I wish it was over and done with so I could get to the better episodes. The King of Omashu is entertaining enough, it has a good moral to it, it includes all of the strengths we have come to know from Avatar, but it's still an early Season 1 and the feel of the lower quality more geared towards kids. It's a fine one-off episode, but that's about it. King Boomy, the Cabbage Guy, and Omashu are great additions to the world though, and all of those lead back to the King of Omashu. Imprisoned is better than most early Season 1 episodes. It is a very tangible theme and some new characters, a prison infiltration, good humor, Katara growing into her character more, a foreboding ending, mostly good stuff. It can be a little melodramatic or goofy at times. I don't know, minor gripes mostly, solid episode, albeit not groundbreaking by any means. The Winter Solstice Part 1 is enjoyable. Its biggest strengths are Aang attempting to fill his role as the Avatar and struggling to do so at first, but then overcoming that. The other strength is the spirit world itself, just a great and interesting part of the universe. I also enjoyed the Zuko-Iroh B-plot. Zuko not chasing the Avatar to help track down Uncle is a great moment to learning and understanding Zuko's character. It is an important step to empathizing with Zuko. We also see that Iroh can see into the spirit world, which showed how much the creators thought out, but also how much restraint they had to not explain or throw everything at the viewer too early. The Winter Solstice Part 1, The Spirit World, is a very solid episode. The Deserter. The Deserter is a solid episode. Aang learns firebending before he is ready, which is interesting how you really have to learn the elements in order because there is knowledge, wisdom, and personal growth that you must learn and understand from the previous elements to learn the next, which just goes to show how much thought and effort went into this world. Zhang is a solid addition to the cast, and Aang tricking Zhao to beating himself is always fun. The Deserter really doesn't do anything bad, but it does lack that punch that unfortunately separates it from the episodes above it. So the Northern Air Temple comes in here at the number 9 spot. There are some interesting ideas about change and being accepting of that change, but it always felt, at least to me, that Aang became too accepting of change in this episode. He has a right to be mad. One of the last places that had ties to the world that Aang knew, one of the last standing monuments and relics to an entire culture, is being handled with the same care and reverence of a used tissue. What could have become an interesting moral of moving on and accepting change while remembering and respecting the past becomes, oh yeah, go ahead, disrespect my entire culture, destroy the remains of my people and my way of life, I don't care. You may think that I hate this episode after that little rant, and may be confused how it's placed all the way up here. Well, everything else I do like. Sokka has great chemistry with Teo's father, and Teo is decent with Katara and Aang. Also, the end fight where they use air superiority to repel an army of tanks is pretty kick-ass. And if I'm being honest, it's probably the main reason this episode is so high. And that foreboding ending. My final point on this episode is that the theme of Aang learning to accept some change does have some merit and value, and I don't completely hate it by any means. It just isn't handled particularly well or with as much depth or nuance as it could have been. The Waterbending Scroll is an example of a perfectly serviceable but unspectacular episode, by Avatar standards at least. It is one of the funnier episodes of the season, and it is able to achieve this without as many childish jokes or cringe-inducing moments. The best jokes obviously coming from some pure classic Iroh lines. It also has a pretty fun fight scene between 3 factions, which is pretty cool. The Aang-Katara plot with Katara becoming upset that Aang gets the hang of waterbending faster than her is fine, I guess. It isn't bad, but it doesn't really do much for me. Overall, solid, but not excellent. BATO of the WATERTRIBE. One of the more divisive episodes from Season 1. One school of thought believes that Aang is way out of character when he hides the map to Sokka and Katara's father. A lot of these people also believe Sokka and Katara act too harshly in response. Another school of thought stands up for this episode. They argue Aang has gone through a lot and fears abandonment. After losing all of his friends and then Gyatso, Katara and Sokka are all he has left and would do anything to keep them, even if it is a little out of line. And based on this episode's placement, I bet you can guess which side I tend to agree with more. Also, Aang only has the map for less than 1 day when they uncover it, so it's not like he was hiding it for like a week or something. I don't think Sokka is out of line either, as the emptiness of abandonment from his father and desire to see him again is what drives his decisions, and what makes him turn around and go back to Aang. That's actually the core focus of this episode. While guilt is on display, abandonment, loneliness, and isolation is the core focus. Sokka, Bato, and Aang all go through the feelings of abandonment. With that being said, I can understand why some people feel like these characters are out of line. It is enough to affect my placement just a little, as I can empathize with some of those gripes. Whether you like the Aang, Katara, Sokka, Bato subplot, you gotta admit, the Zuko Iroh portion of this episode is very entertaining, and June and the Shirshu are great additions. It's also hilarious how Uncle tries to flirt with June. Anyways, the episode culminates in an awesome fight scene that includes Appa kicking some ass and Aang duking it out with Zuko. Number 6 is the Southern Air Temple. While The Storm is credited with being the episode that launched Avatar to new heights, and while this is true, more on that later, I believe the Southern Air Temple was the first truly good Avatar episode. Aang going back home, expecting to find his people while Katara struggles with how to tell him the truth, which all culminates in Aang entering the Avatar state and setting off all the other temples around the world. It's all great stuff that both has the childhood charm of the show, while also introducing us to a little bit more of a deeper level of storytelling. But what really makes this episode is Zuko and Zhao's Agni Kai. Zuko winning, Zhao acting disgraceful in defeat, and then Iroh putting him in his place. The chemistry and conflict between this trio is set up here, and it lasts for the rest of the season. Avatar Roku is a top 5 episode in Season 1. And let me tell you, there's a bit of a jump from that last episode to this one. This is one of the most important episodes to the overall plot in Book 1. What I love is even though the episode really only exists to give exposition, it is done in a way that is engaging to the viewer. Combine this with a cool problem-solving action sequence, as well as an episode that makes Zhao, Zuko, and Aang all meet in one location, which is great to see. The part where Aang says, "I'm ready," is goosebump worthy. He's not only saying he's ready to face the danger that awaits outside the door, but the danger that awaits outside the world, accepting his fate to master the elements and face the Fire Lord by summer's end. Fantastic. Just fantastic. The first part of the finale does a great job at being the start of an epic finish to a great season. With that being said, it isn't quite into the top 3 chapters which make up the top tier of Season 1. An epic battle with top-notch action, including Katara dueling Zuko, is all great. but the Siege of the North Part 1 doesn't forget to have some humor and some great character moments. It's the weaker half of the two-parter for obvious reasons, but it's still a good episode and I look forward to it on every watch-through. The Blue Spirit comes in as my first episode in what you could call my big three for Season 1. While I could live without the crazy cat lady herbalist and the frog sucking, that stuff can be a little funny and certainly never detracts from the main focus of the episode. And the Momo, Sokka, Katara stuff is actually pretty funny considering it is on the kiddier side of humor. The main part of the episode, and the reason it's obviously ranked so high for me, is the Zuko Aang parts, which are just phenomenal. The escape fight is fantastic and shows off a ton of creativity and places the idea into the audience's mind that Zuko and Aang would make a great team. There's so much to talk about with this episode, but I really just don't have the time. I could talk about the classic,
"If we knew each other back then, do you think we could have been friends too?"
line, or how Zuko turns away from the Fire Nation sign at the end of the episode, showing that he feels like his return home is becoming increasingly far-fetched, or perhaps it's the seed of questioning his own allegiance to his nation. This is easily one of the best Avatar episodes in the entire show, and is most definitely deserving of the number 3 spot in Season 1. The finale of Season 1 is absolutely phenomenal. From Iroh going off when Zhao kills the Moon Spirit, an absolute trashing of the Fire Nation Navy, to Yue sacrificing herself to her father's
so proud and sad,
to Zhao and Zuko finally duking it out, Zhao not letting Zuko save him, which is a moment that to me really cemented his character. Aang's visit to the spirit world, Zuko's speech, which is one of my favorite in the whole show. There's just too much here to really go into detail for just a ranking video, as it is jam-packed with epic, funny, sad, and happy moments, and more. It has some of the best art direction in the entire series, and maybe that I've seen ever. It is just truly one of the best episodes in all of Book 1 in the series as a whole. This finale really cemented Avatar as a legitimate contender for the best show, and it really is the perfect way to wrap up an overall great season. The Storm is without a doubt the best episode in Season 1, and it's not even close. This episode perfectly fills in the backstory of our lead protagonist and antagonist while drawing parallels between them. Aang opens up to Katara about his decision to run away that led to the death of his people and the world to fall into disarray. Iroh tells Zuko's backstory and why he was banished and where his scar came from. Both tales are gripping and show how our characters are not so different after all. Not to mention there is some great symbolism here. Aang bending an air bubble around his friends as opposed to the ice capsule, showing his change in state of mind from fear, loneliness, and desire to run and hide to desire to help, and his acceptance of his position and role as the Avatar. Aang, flying through the eye of the storm, literally is the one hope of happiness and freedom in a storm of turmoil that is Zuko. This look at the end just carries so much weight, and this single moment would be the true beginning of one of the greatest shows of all time, and that is why The Storm is number 1. So there you have it, my Avatar Book 1 Water rankings. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you leave your list with a little explanation down below. I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys next time for Book 2, Earth.